In the heart of London, where the streets buzz with life and the subway trains rattle through tunnels like clockwork, an ordinary evening was about to turn extraordinary. It was just another day for the thousands of people commuting home after work, running errands, or meeting friends. But on this particular night, something happened that no one saw coming, a moment that would remind everyone that heroes don't always wear capes. The story begins with an elderly woman who had spent her afternoon doing what she loved most, visiting a small market near her neighborhood. She carried a handbag filled with essentials, her wallet containing the little money she had, some medicine she needed daily, and a few cherished photographs of her late husband. Her hands trembled slightly as she held onto the strap of her bag, but her eyes were bright, reflecting years of wisdom and kindness. Unbeknownst to her, a young man had been watching her every move since she boarded the subway at Piccadilly Circus. He wasn't there by chance, he had chosen her as his target. The young man, barely out of his teens, had fallen into a life of petty crime after struggling to find steady work during tough times. To him, stealing from strangers on the subway seemed like an easy way to get by. But what he didn't realize was that someone else was also watching, and this person wasn't going to let him get away with it. As the train rattled through the underground tunnels, the young man positioned himself strategically behind the elderly woman. His practiced hands moved quickly, slipping the strap of her bag from her shoulder without making a sound. Most passengers were lost in their own worlds, scrolling through their phones or staring blankly ahead. No one noticed the theft, not even the woman herself, who continued to hold on to the now empty strap of her bag, unaware of what had just happened. But there was someone who noticed. Across the carriage sat a man who looked like he could have stepped straight out of an action movie. With sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, Jason Statham had been quietly observing the scene unfold. The actor, known worldwide for his roles in high-octane films, was simply heading home after meeting friends for dinner. But when he saw the young man's sly movements, he immediately recognized them for what they were, a robbery in progress. Instead of jumping up and causing a scene, Statham stayed calm. He knew better than to act rashly. Instead, he watched carefully, waiting for the right moment to intervene. As the train approached Leicester Square Station, the thief made his move, pushing through the crowd toward the doors. That's when Statham sprang into action. With the precision of someone who had performed similar stunts countless times on screen, Statham maneuvered through the crowded carriage. Just as the thief stepped onto the platform, Statham grabbed him firmly by the arm. "I think you've got something that doesn't belong to you," he said in a firm but controlled voice. The young man froze, his face turning pale as he realized who was confronting him. For a brief moment, the thief tried to play innocent. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, attempting to pull away. But Statham wasn't fooled. Without hesitation, he retrieved the stolen bag from the thief's grasp and called out to the elderly woman who was still seated inside the train. "Madam, I believe this belongs to you," he said, holding up the bag. The elderly woman's eyes widened in shock as she hurried off the train. When she saw her bag safely back in her possession, relief washed over her face. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. Meanwhile, the young thief stood frozen, caught red-handed and unable to escape. Other passengers began to notice what was happening. Some pulled out their phones to record the scene, while others cheered quietly, grateful that someone had stepped in to stop the crime. Within minutes, a transit police officer arrived, alerted by concerned commuters. Statham handed over the thief to the authorities, ensuring the situation was handled properly before disappearing into the crowd. As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, the elderly woman found herself overwhelmed by emotions. She thanked Statham repeatedly, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. For her, this encounter was more than just getting her belongings back. It was a reminder that there are still good people in the world, willing to step up when it matters. Most for Statham, the incident was simply part of being human. In interviews later, he would downplay his actions, saying anyone could have done the same thing. But those who witnessed the event knew better. What made the moment special wasn't just the fact that a celebrity had intervened. It was the Way he did it with calmness, respect, and a sense of responsibility. Word of the incident spread quickly, thanks to social media and eyewitness accounts. Videos of Statham confronting the thief went viral overnight, sparking conversations about community safety and personal responsibility. People praised not only his bravery, but also the way he handled the situation without resorting to violence. It was a real-life example of how quick thinking and compassion can make all the difference. As the days passed, the story continued to evolve, touching lives far beyond the subway platform where it all began. For the elderly woman, it became a turning point, a reminder to stay vigilant but also to trust in the goodness of others. For the young thief, it marked the beginning of a long road ahead, facing consequences for his actions, while hopefully learning valuable lessons along the way. And for Statham, it reinforced his belief in the power of individual action, inspiring him to use his platform to advocate for safer communities. Little did anyone know, however, that this was only the start of a chain reaction, one that would bring unexpected changes to everyone involved. As the subway doors slid shut behind them, the scene on the platform quickly turned into a mix of chaos and quiet awe. The elderly woman clutched her bag tightly to her chest, as if afraid it might vanish again. Her hands trembled slightly, but this time it wasn't from age. It was from the overwhelming rush of emotions she felt. Relief, gratitude, and even a touch of disbelief washed over her face. She looked up at Jason Statham, who stood there calmly, his expression steady and reassuring. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, her voice cracking with emotion. "I can't thank you enough." Statham gave her a small smile, one that carried both warmth and humility. "It's not about what I had to do," he replied. "It's about doing what's right. Just be careful next time, all right? Keep your bag closer." His words were simple, but they carried weight. For the elderly woman, it wasn't just advice. It was a reminder that someone cared. That even in a crowded subway full of strangers, there were still people looking out for one another. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes, and whispered another heartfelt thank you, before stepping back to let the authorities handle the situation. Meanwhile, the young thief stood frozen, his bravado crumbling under the weight of the moment. He glanced around nervously, clearly unsure of what to do or say. The transit police officer approached him, handcuffs ready, and began reading him his rights. As the reality of the situation sank in, the thief's shoulders slumped in defeat. His attempt to slip away unnoticed had failed spectacularly, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. But something unexpected happened during those tense moments. Instead of anger or hostility, many of the passengers who had witnessed the incident seemed more curious than anything else. A few people stepped forward to speak with the police, offering their accounts of what had happened. One man held up his phone showing footage he'd recorded of the confrontation. "This guy stopped him," the man said, pointing towards Statham. "He handled it perfectly." Others chimed in, sharing bits and pieces of what they'd seen. Some praised Statham for his quick thinking, while others expressed relief that the elderly woman hadn't been hurt. The atmosphere shifted from tension to a strange sense of unity, as though the incident had reminded everyone present of their shared humanity. Strangers exchanged nods and smiles, silently acknowledging the importance of standing up for one another when it mattered most. For Statham, the attention was both familiar and uncomfortable. Used to being in the spotlight because of his career, he nonetheless preferred to keep things low-key in moments like these. After ensuring the elderly woman was safe and the thief was securely in police custody, he quietly slipped away from the crowd. He didn't stick around for interviews or applause. Instead, he simply walked off the platform and disappeared into the flow of commuters heading home. By the time news of the incident reached social media, however, there was no hiding what had happened. Someone had posted a video of the entire event online, capturing Statham's calm intervention and the reactions of those around him. Within hours, the clip went viral, sparking conversations across platforms. People marveled at how the real-life action hero had stepped in to protect an innocent victim, proving that sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction. The comments sections of posts about the incident were flooded with praise. Finally, someone using their fame for good, one user wrote. Another joked, "This is probably the most realistic fight scene he's ever done." But beneath the humor and admiration lay a deeper message. Acts of kindness and bravery, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect far beyond what we might expect. Back at the station, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. The elderly woman eventually made her way home, clutching her bag tightly and replaying the evening's events in her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about the man who had intervened on her behalf. Though she recognized him from movies, it wasn't his celebrity status that stayed with her. It was the kindness and respect he had shown her in a moment of vulnerability. That night, as she sat in her cozy living room sipping tea, she reflected on how close she had come to losing everything important to her. Her wallet contained only a modest amount of money, but it represented security and independence, things she valued deeply. And then there were the photographs, irreplaceable mementos of a life well lived. Losing them would have been devastating. Thanks to Statham's intervention, none of that had come to pass. For the young thief, the story took a different turn. At the police station, he was booked and questioned, his earlier confidence replaced by shame and fear. During the interrogation, he admitted to several other thefts, each one driven by desperation rather than malice. He spoke of struggling to find work, of feeling trapped in a cycle of bad decisions, and of seeing stealing as the only way out. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation, one that painted a picture of a life spiraling out of control. What struck the officers most was how visibly shaken the young man was by the evening's events. When asked about Statham's involvement, he hesitated before speaking. "I didn't know it was him until he grabbed me," he said, his voice trembling. "When I realized who he was, I just froze. I mean, he's supposed to be some kind of action hero, right? But he didn't act like one. He was calm, like he knew exactly what to do. It made me feel stupid, I guess." The officer nodded, jotting down notes. While the young man's actions couldn't be excused, it was clear that the encounter had left a mark on him. Perhaps, they thought, this could be the wake-up call he needed to turn his life around. As word of the incident spread, it sparked discussions not just about crime but also about community and personal responsibility. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a rare moment of positivity in a world often dominated by negativity. Viewers were encouraged to remain vigilant not just for themselves but for others around them. Tips for staying safe on public transportation were shared widely, alongside reminders to look out for vulnerable individuals like the elderly woman. Even businesses near the subway station got involved. Cafes and shops began displaying posters with safety tips, while some offered discounts to customers who attended self-defense workshops organized by local community groups. The incident had ignited a spirit of cooperation and care that extended far beyond the platform where it all began. For Statham, the aftermath of the event was quieter, but no less impactful. Though he avoided giving formal interviews, he did use his social media presence to highlight the importance of looking out for one another. In a brief post, he wrote, "We're all responsible for making our communities safer. If you see something wrong, don't ignore it. Speak up, step in, and help where you can. Together we can make a difference." The message resonated deeply, earning thousands of likes and shares. Fans praised him not just for his courage, but for using his platform to inspire others. For many, it served as a reminder that heroes aren't defined by their strength or fame. They're defined by their willingness to act when it matters most. And yet, despite all the attention, the true impact of that night wouldn't become fully clear until much later. Lives had been touched in ways that weren't immediately visible, seeds of change planted in hearts and minds. For the elderly woman, the young thief, and countless others who heard the story, the events on the subway would linger as a powerful reminder of the connections we share and the choices we make that shape the world around us. The days following the subway incident brought a wave of attention that rippled through London and beyond. For the elderly woman, life took on a new rhythm as she processed what had happened. She couldn't shake the image of the man who had stepped in to help her, a man whose face she recognized from movies but whose actions felt deeply personal. Every time she opened her bag or glanced at the cherished photographs inside, she was reminded of how close she had come to losing them forever. It wasn't just about the items. It was about the memories they represented, the pieces of her life that were irreplaceable. Determined not to let fear take hold, she decided to turn the experience into something positive. Over the next few weeks, she began visiting local community centers, sharing her story with groups of seniors. Her message was simple: stay alert, trust your instincts, and don't hesitate to ask for help if you feel unsafe. But more than that, she emphasized the importance of looking out for one another. "We're stronger together," she would say, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "If we all keep an eye out for each other, no one has to face these kinds of situations alone." Her talks struck a chord with many. Older adults nodded in agreement, some sharing their own experiences of feeling vulnerable in public spaces. Younger volunteers listened intently, inspired by her courage and resilience. Slowly but surely, her story became a catalyst for change within the community. People started organizing neighborhood watch programs, setting up phone trees to check on elderly neighbors, and even hosting workshops on personal safety. What began as a single act of kindness on a subway train had sparked a movement, a reminder that even in a big city like London, small gestures could create a sense of belonging and security. For the young thief, the days after his arrest were filled with reflection and regret. Sitting in a holding cell, he replayed the events over and over in his mind. He thought about the elderly woman's trembling hands and the calm authority in Statham's voice when he confronted him. Most of all, he thought about the choices that had led him to this moment, the string of bad decisions that had spiraled out of control. During his court appearance, the judge listened carefully as the young man explained his circumstances. He spoke of growing up in a tough environment, of struggling to find work during the pandemic, and of feeling trapped in a cycle of poverty and desperation. His words weren't excuses. They were confessions, raw and honest. The courtroom fell, silent as he admitted, "I never meant to hurt anyone, I just didn't know what else to do." The judge, though stern, seemed to recognize the sincerity in his apology. Instead of handing down a harsh sentence, he offered the young man a chance at redemption. Community service, counseling, and participation in a rehabilitation program became part of his punishment. It wasn't an easy path, but it was a lifeline, one that gave him hope for a better future. As the months passed, the young man threw himself into the programs designed to help him turn his life around. He worked at a local shelter, serving meals to those less fortunate and hearing their stories. He attended therapy sessions, unpacking the anger and frustration that had fueled his poor decisions. And slowly, he began to rebuild his sense of self-worth. The memory of the subway incident stayed with him, not as a source of shame but as a turning point, a moment when someone chose to show him compassion instead of judgment. For Jason Statham, the aftermath of the event was quieter but no less meaningful. Though he avoided the spotlight, the incident reinforced his belief in the power of individual action. In interviews promoting his upcoming films, reporters inevitably asked about the subway confrontation. Each time he downplayed his role, insisting that anyone could have done the same thing. "It's not about being a hero," he said with a shrug. "It's about doing what's right. If you see someone in trouble, step up. That's all there is to it." But behind the modesty lay a deeper truth. The incident had reminded him of why he chose to portray characters who stood up for justice and protected the innocent. It wasn't just about making entertaining movies. It was about inspiring people to be better versions of themselves. Inspired by the response to the subway story, Statham began using his platform to advocate for causes close to his heart. He partnered with organizations focused on community safety and youth mentorship, speaking openly about the importance of second chances and the value of looking out for one another. Social media played a significant role in amplifying the impact of the incident. Videos of the confrontation continued to circulate, accompanied by comments from viewers expressing gratitude and admiration. Some shared their own stories of stepping in to help strangers, while others pledged to be more vigilant in public spaces. The hashtag #Damars Look Out for Each Other began trending, sparking conversations about collective responsibility and the power of small acts of kindness. Local businesses also joined the movement, finding creative ways to contribute. A cafe near the subway station started offering free coffee to customers who attended safety workshops, while a bookstore hosted readings featuring authors who wrote about overcoming adversity. Even the transit authority got involved, launching a campaign to educate passengers about staying safe while traveling. Posters with tips on securing belongings and recognizing suspicious behavior appeared in stations across the city, alongside messages encouraging commuters to speak up if they saw something wrong. What made the response so remarkable was its organic nature. There was no central organization driving the effort, just ordinary people coming together to make their communities safer and more compassionate. From school children learning about empathy in class to retirees volunteering as mentors, the ripple effect of that single evening on the subway touched lives in ways no one could have predicted. As winter approached, the city seemed to carry the spirit of the incident with it. Lights strung across streets and shop windows glowed warmly, casting a soft light on bustling sidewalks. Commuters bundled up against the cold, exchanging nods and smiles as they hurried to their destinations. On the subway platforms, posters, reminding passengers to stay alert, stay safe, stood alongside advertisements for holiday sales and concerts. Life went on, as it always does, but there was a subtle shift in the air, a renewed sense of connection and purpose. For the elderly, woman, the young thief, and countless others, the subway incident remained a defining moment. It wasn't just a story of theft and intervention. It was a testament to the power of human kindness, accountability, and resilience. As the year drew to a close, people found themselves reflecting on the lessons learned from that night. They realized that while heroes might not wear capes, they are everywhere, in the quiet acts of courage, the willingness to step up, and the determination to build a better world, one small gesture at a time. And yet, even as the immediate impact of the incident faded into memory, its legacy continued to grow. Conversations sparked by the event evolved into initiatives aimed at fostering safer, kinder communities. People began to see themselves not as isolated individuals, but as threads in a larger tapestry, each one contributing to the strength and beauty of the whole. The subway platform where it all began became a symbol of possibility, a place where strangers could come together, united by shared values and a desire to make a difference. Little did anyone know, however, that the story was far from over. New connections would form, old wounds would heal, and unexpected opportunities would arise. The seeds planted that night on the subway were only beginning to sprout, promising a future shaped by the choices made in the present. As weeks turned into months, the subway incident continued to weave its way through the lives of those involved, leaving behind a trail of unexpected changes. For the elderly woman, her newfound role as a community advocate brought a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Her talks at senior centers and local events became more frequent, and with each appearance, her confidence grew. She began carrying a small notebook with her, jotting down questions from her audience and ideas for future discussions. One evening, after speaking at a neighborhood gathering, a young woman approached her. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said softly, her voice tinged with emotion. "Your story made me realize how important it is to look out for my grandmother. I've been so busy with work that I haven't been checking in on her as much as I should." The elderly woman smiled warmly, patting the young woman's hand. "It's never too late to start," she replied. "A simple phone call or visit can mean the world." That moment stayed with her long after the event ended. It reminded her that her story wasn't just about what had happened on the subway. It was about the connections it inspired. People were listening, and they were taking action. Neighbors started organizing weekly check-ins for seniors living alone, while schools incorporated lessons on empathy and kindness into their curriculums. Even small businesses joined the effort, offering discounts to customers who attended safety workshops or volunteered in the community. For the young thief, Life was slowly beginning to change in ways he never imagined. His days were now filled with tasks that once seemed foreign to him: serving meals at a shelter, mentoring troubled teens, and attending counseling sessions to unpack the emotions he had buried for so long. At first, he struggled to open up, unsure of how to express the guilt and shame he carried. But over time, he found solace in sharing his story with others who had faced similar struggles. One afternoon, while working at the shelter, he met an older man who reminded him of the woman he had robbed on the subway. The man walked with a cane and spoke gently, his eyes filled with warmth despite the hardships he had endured. As they chatted, the young man found himself opening up about his past mistakes. To his surprise, the older man didn't judge him. Instead, he listened intently and then said, "We all make poor choices, son. What matters is what you do next." Those words stuck with him. They became a mantra guiding him as he worked to rebuild his life. He began volunteering more often, finding fulfillment in helping others who were struggling. Slowly but surely, he started to see himself not as a failure, but as someone capable of growth and redemption. The memory of the subway incident no longer haunted him. Instead, it served as a reminder of the second chance he had been given, and the responsibility that came with it. Meanwhile, Jason Statham continued to use his platform to amplify messages of kindness and accountability. Though he avoided making the incident the center of attention, he often referenced it during interviews to highlight the importance of looking out for one another. "We're all part of the same community," he would say. "If we see someone in need, we have a duty to help. It doesn't take much, a kind word, a helping hand, but it can make all the difference." His words resonated deeply with fans around the world. Social media buzzed with stories of people stepping in to assist strangers, from returning lost wallets to helping tourists navigate unfamiliar streets. The hashtag #IsEveryday heroes gained traction, encouraging users to share acts of kindness they witnessed or performed. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about celebrating the small, everyday moments that made the world a better place. In London, the impact of the subway incident extended beyond individual actions. Community groups sprang up across the city, united by a shared goal: creating safer, more connected neighborhoods. One such group focused on improving safety on public transportation. Volunteers handed out pamphlets with tips for staying vigilant, while others organized patrols to ensure passengers felt secure during late-night commutes. Transit authorities took notice, implementing additional measures like increased lighting and security cameras in stations. Local businesses also played a key role in fostering this spirit of cooperation. A popular cafe near the subway station launched a pay-it-forward program, allowing customers to purchase drinks or snacks for strangers in need. Within weeks, the initiative gained widespread support, with patrons eagerly participating in the effort. The cafe's owner, a middle-aged man with a warm smile, explained why he started the program. "After hearing about what happened on the subway, I realized we all have a part to play in making our community stronger. This is just one small way to give back." Even schools embraced the movement, teaching students the value of compassion and responsibility. Teachers incorporated real-life scenarios into their lessons, encouraging kids to think critically about how they could help others. Art projects featuring messages of kindness adorned classroom walls, while assemblies celebrated students who demonstrated empathy and leadership. Parents noticed the difference, remarking on how their children had become more thoughtful and considerate. As spring arrived, bringing with it warmer weather and longer days, the city seemed to hum with renewed energy. Parks buzzed with activity, as families gathered for picnics and street performers entertained crowds with music and laughter. On subway platforms, posters promoting safety and community solidarity stood alongside advertisements for concerts and festivals. Life moved forward as it always does, but there was a subtle shift, an undercurrent of connection and care that hadn't been there before. For the elderly woman, the young thief, and countless others, the subway incident remained a touchstone, a moment that had changed everything. It wasn't just about the theft or the intervention, it was about the ripple effect that followed. Lives had been touched, perspectives shifted, and communities strengthened. People began to see themselves not as isolated individuals, but as threads in a larger tapestry, each one contributing to the strength and beauty of the whole. And yet, even as the immediate impact of the incident faded into memory, its legacy continued to grow. New friendships formed, old wounds healed, and unexpected opportunities arose. The seeds planted that night on the subway were only beginning to sprout, promising a future shaped by the choices made in the present. Little did anyone know, however, that the story was far from over. More chapters were waiting to unfold, carrying with them the promise of hope, healing, and transformation. As the months rolled on, the subway incident continued to shape lives in ways no one could have predicted. For the elderly woman, her journey as a community advocate brought her closer to people she might never have met otherwise. One sunny afternoon, while speaking at a local library, she noticed a young boy sitting quietly in the front row, clutching a worn notebook. After her talk, he approached her shyly, his eyes wide with curiosity. "I wrote something about what you said," he mumbled, holding out the notebook. Inside were sketches and short sentences, his interpretation of her story. The elderly woman knelt down to meet him at eye level, her heart swelling with pride. "This is wonderful," she said, her voice soft but full of admiration. "You've got a gift for storytelling." The boy beamed, and from that day on, they formed an unlikely friendship. She began visiting the library regularly, encouraging him to write more, and even sharing some of his work during her talks. The boy's confidence grew, and soon he was writing stories not just about heroes, but about everyday acts of kindness, inspired by the very event that had sparked this chain reaction. Meanwhile, the young thief found himself stepping into a role he never imagined: mentorship. At the shelter where he volunteered, he connected deeply with a group of teenagers who reminded him of his younger self, lost, frustrated, and searching for direction. He started sharing his experiences openly, not to glorify his past mistakes, but to show them that change was possible. "I messed up big time," he would tell them, "but I'm learning every day how to do better. You can too." One evening, after a particularly heartfelt conversation, a teenage girl pulled him aside. "Thanks for being honest with us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It makes me think maybe I don't have to keep doing what I've been doing." Her words struck a chord with him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was making a real difference, not through grand gestures, but through simple honesty and presence. Jason Statham, though busy with his film career, remained deeply invested in the ripple effects of that fateful night. During downtime on set, he often reflected on how the incident had inspired him to use his influence for good. He teamed up with organizations focused on youth empowerment and crime prevention, using his celebrity status to draw attention to their work. In interviews, he spoke passionately about the importance of second chances and the power of community support. "People aren't defined by their worst moments," he told a reporter during one such interview. "We all make mistakes, but it's what we do afterward that matters. If we create spaces where people feel supported, they're more likely to choose a better path." His words resonated widely, sparking conversations about rehabilitation and restorative justice. Viewers flooded social media with messages of gratitude, praising him not just for his films but for his genuine commitment to making a difference. Back in London, the movement sparked by the subway incident continued to gain momentum. Community leaders organized events aimed at fostering connection and trust among residents. A monthly Neighbor Day was introduced, where locals gathered in parks and squares to share food, music, and stories. These gatherings became opportunities for people to break down barriers and form bonds they might not have otherwise. At one such event, the elderly woman crossed paths with someone unexpected: the transit officer who had arrested the young thief that night. They recognized each other immediately and exchanged warm smiles. "How's the lad doing?" the officer asked, his tone kind. She nodded, explaining how much he had grown since then. Their conversation turned into a discussion about the broader impact of the incident: the workshops, the outreach programs, the renewed sense of vigilance and care within the community. It's amazing how one moment can lead to so much change. the officer remarked thoughtfully. She agreed, adding, "Sometimes it takes something small to remind us of what really matters, looking out for each other, no matter who we are or where we come from." Even businesses continued to play a vital role in sustaining the movement. The cafe's Pay It Forward program expanded, inspiring similar initiatives in other neighborhoods. Local shops began offering discounts to customers who participated in volunteer efforts, creating a culture of reciprocity and goodwill. Street artists contributed murals depicting themes of unity and resilience, turning blank walls into vibrant reminders of the city's collective spirit. For commuters, life on the subway felt subtly different. While trains remained crowded and schedules tightly packed, there was a newfound sense of awareness among passengers. Strangers occasionally exchanged polite nods or offered help when someone struggled with luggage or needed directions. Posters promoting safety tips still adorned station walls, but they now included messages of gratitude. Thank you for looking out for each other. The changes weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. It was in the little things. A teenager deciding against joining a gang because of a mentor's advice, a senior feeling less alone because of a neighbor's weekly visits, a commuter choosing to speak up when they saw something suspicious. Each act, however small, added another thread to the fabric of a stronger, kinder community. As summer approached, bringing longer days and warmer nights, the city buzzed with activity. Parks hosted outdoor movie screenings featuring films chosen for their themes of courage and compassion, including one starring Jason Statham. Families spread out blankets on the grass, laughing and chatting as the sun dipped below the horizon. Before the screening began, a representative from a local nonprofit took the stage to thank everyone for their ongoing efforts to build a safer, more connected city. "We've come so far since that night on the subway," they said, their voice carrying over the crowd. "But let's remember, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Every choice we make shapes the world around us. Let's keep choosing kindness, accountability, and hope." The audience erupted into applause, a mix of cheers and whistles, echoing through the park. As the film flickered to life on the screen, people settled back, their faces illuminated by the glow of the projector. For many, the story unfolding before them felt familiar, not because of its plot, but because of the values it represented: courage, compassion, connection. And yet, even as the city celebrated these achievements, new challenges lay ahead. Not everyone embraced the changes wholeheartedly. Some dismissed them as fleeting trends, while others resisted efforts to address deeper issues like inequality and systemic barriers. But those who had been touched by the subway incident refused to let cynicism dampen their resolve. They knew progress wasn't linear. It required patience, persistence, and faith in the power of collective action. For the elderly woman, the young thief, and countless others, the journey was far from over. The subway incident had ignited something extraordinary, a spark that continued to burn brightly, illuminating paths toward healing, growth, and transformation. Little did they know, however, that the most surprising chapter of all was yet to unfold. As autumn settled over London, painting the streets in hues of amber and gold, the ripple effects of the subway incident continued to unfold in ways that surprised even those at the heart of the story. For the elderly woman, her role as a community advocate had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. What started as a personal mission to share her experience had blossomed into something much larger, a movement driven by ordinary people determined to make their city a better place. One crisp morning, she received an invitation that left her speechless. A local nonprofit organization, inspired by her efforts, asked her to speak at a major event celebrating community resilience. The venue was a grand hall downtown, filled with hundreds of attendees, community leaders, volunteers, students, and families who had all been touched by the wave of kindness sweeping through the city. As she stood on stage, clutching the microphone with trembling hands, she felt a mix of nerves and pride. "I never expected this," she admitted, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "I didn't think my story would matter to anyone but me. But now I see how wrong I was. It's not about what happened on that subway, it's about what we choose to do next." Every one of us has the power to make a difference, no matter how small. Her words resonated deeply with the audience. People nodded along, some wiping away tears while others scribbled notes in journals. After her talk, a long line formed, as individuals approached her to express their gratitude or share their own stories of courage and connection. One man, wearing a transit authority uniform, introduced himself as the officer who had first responded to the theft months earlier. "You've done something incredible," he said, his tone sincere. "You've reminded us all why we do what we do, to protect and support each other. Thank you for keeping the spirit alive." The encounter stayed with her long after the event ended. It wasn't just the praise that moved her. It was the realization that her actions had inspired others to reflect on their own roles within the community. She began receiving invitations to speak at schools, businesses, and even government offices, where policymakers sought her insights on fostering safer public spaces. Her message remained consistent. Look out for one another. Trust your instincts and never underestimate the impact of a single act of kindness. For the young thief, life had transformed in ways he once thought impossible. His days were now filled with purpose, working at the shelter and mentoring teens who reminded him of his younger self. He still attended counseling sessions, unpacking years of anger and regret, but he also found joy in helping others navigate their struggles. One evening, as he helped organize a food drive for struggling families, he noticed a familiar face among the volunteers, the elderly woman whose bag he had stolen. At first, he froze, unsure of how to approach her, but she spotted him before he could retreat, waving him over with a warm smile. "It's good to see you again," she said simply, extending her hand. He hesitated, then shook it, his throat tight with emotion. They exchanged a few words, nothing profound, but the moment carried weight. It was a quiet acknowledgement of growth, for both of them. Later that night, unable to sleep, he reflected on how far he'd come. The guilt of his past actions still lingered, but it no longer consumed him. Instead, it fueled his determination to prove that people can change. He began documenting his journey, writing letters to the teens he mentored about the lessons he'd learned along the way. "You're not defined by your mistakes," he wrote. "You're defined by what you do after them." Meanwhile, Jason Statham quietly continued his advocacy work, using his platform to amplify voices often overlooked in mainstream conversations. During a charity gala hosted by a youth empowerment organization, he shared the stage with several young people who had turned their lives around after facing adversity. When asked about his involvement, he shrugged modestly. "I'm just here to listen and learn," he said. "These kids are the real heroes. They're the ones showing us what resilience looks like." His humility endeared him even more to fans, many of whom took his words to heart. Social media lit up with posts from people sharing their own stories of overcoming challenges, inspired by his message of hope and second chances. Hashtags like "Never Give Up" and "Help Each Other" trended, creating digital spaces where strangers connected over shared struggles and triumphs. Back in the neighborhoods surrounding the subway station where it all began, the sense of unity grew stronger with each passing day. Community gardens sprouted in vacant lots, tended by volunteers of all ages. Murals depicting themes of solidarity and strength adorned walls once covered in graffiti. Even the smallest acts of kindness, like holding the door open for someone or offering directions to a lost tourist, became part of the cultural fabric. One chilly afternoon, a group of commuters gathered at the station to unveil a new art installation dedicated to the subway incident. Designed by local artists, the piece featured intertwined figures representing different walks of life, symbolizing the connections forged through compassion and courage. Beneath it was a plaque inscribed with a simple message: "Together we..." Harrison. And as winter approached, bringing shorter days and frosty mornings, the city brimmed with warmth, not from the weather, but from the bonds between its residents. Families decorated their windows with lights, leaving notes of encouragement for passers-by. Shopkeepers handed out free hot chocolate during rush hour, spreading cheer to weary travelers. And on the subway platforms, posters promoting safety and kindness remained fixtures, reminders of the values that united everyone. But amid the progress, challenges persisted. Not everyone embraced the changes enthusiastically. Some dismissed the movement as naive or impractical, arguing that systemic issues required more than goodwill to solve. Others resisted efforts to address inequality, clinging to old prejudices. Yet those committed to the cause refused to let negativity derail their momentum. They knew lasting change wouldn't happen overnight, but they also knew that every step forward mattered. For the elderly woman, the young thief, and countless others, the subway incident had become a cornerstone of their lives, shaping decisions and inspiring action. It wasn't just a story about theft and intervention. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collective effort. Lives had been transformed, perspectives shifted, and communities strengthened, all because of one moment on a crowded train. And yet, as the year drew to a close, whispers of a new chapter began to circulate. Rumors spread of a reunion, a gathering of the key players in the story, brought together not by chance but by choice. No one knew exactly what form it would take or what surprises awaited, but one thing was certain: the legacy of that night on the subway was far from finished. It was evolving, growing, and preparing to inspire yet another wave of transformation. As the holiday season approached, London buzzed with festive energy. Streets glittered with lights, shop windows displayed cheerful decorations, and the air carried the faint scent of roasted chestnuts. Amid this backdrop of celebration, plans for a special reunion began to take shape, a gathering that would bring together the key figures from the subway incident. It wasn't an official event or something grandly organized. Rather, it was a quiet, heartfelt idea sparked by the elderly woman herself. She had been thinking about it for weeks, reflecting on how much her life had changed since that fateful night. The young thief, the actor who intervened, the transit officer, and even the strangers who stepped forward to help. All of them were part of a story bigger than any one person. She wanted to thank them properly, not just with words, but with a moment of connection. So, she reached out to each of them individually, inviting them to meet at a cozy cafe near the subway station where it all began. The day of the reunion arrived, crisp and bright, with a soft breeze carrying the promise of new beginnings. The elderly woman was the first to arrive, dressed warmly in a woolen coat and scarf she had knitted herself. As others trickled in, one by one, they exchanged warm greetings, their faces lighting up with recognition. There was no awkwardness, only a sense of familiarity, as if they were old friends reuniting after years apart. Jason Statham walked in last, his presence immediately noticed but never overwhelming. He greeted everyone with a quiet smile, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. When he sat down beside the elderly woman, she handed him a small package wrapped neatly in brown paper. "It's nothing fancy," she said, her voice tinged with humility. "Just a little token of my gratitude." Inside was a handmade scarf stitched with care and adorned with subtle patterns. Statham unfolded it slowly, his expression softening. "This means more to me than you know," he said sincerely. "Thank you." The gesture set the tone for the rest of the afternoon, simple, heartfelt, and deeply human. As they sipped hot tea and shared slices of cake, conversation flowed naturally. They spoke about everything: the challenges they'd faced, the lessons they'd learned, and the ways their lives had shifted because of that single moment on the subway. The young thief, now months into his journey of redemption, opened up about the struggles he still encountered, but also the hope he felt every time he saw someone smile because of his efforts. "I used to think I was stuck," he admitted, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "But now I realize we're all capable of change. It's not easy, but it's worth it." The elderly woman nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "That's what this is all about," she said softly. "None of us are alone. We lean on each other, support each other, and grow together. That's how we move forward." The transit officer chimed in, sharing stories of how the incident had inspired his colleagues to be more proactive in ensuring passenger safety. "It reminded us why we wear the badge," he explained. not just to enforce rules but to protect people, to make sure everyone gets home safely. Even the cafe owner joined in, recounting how the Pay It Forward program had transformed not just his business, but the entire neighborhood. "People come here now not just for coffee," he said with a grin, "but to feel connected. That's something money can't buy." As the hours passed, laughter mingled with moments of reflection, creating a tapestry of shared experiences. Strangers who had once crossed paths briefly on a crowded train were now bound by something far deeper, a mutual understanding of resilience, compassion, and the power of second chances. For many, it was a reminder that life's most meaningful moments often stem from the simplest acts of kindness. When the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting golden light through the cafe windows, the group decided to take a walk together. They strolled through nearby streets, stopping occasionally to admire holiday decorations or chat with passers-by. Eventually, they found themselves back at the subway station where it all began. The art installation dedicated to the incident stood proudly, its intertwined figures glowing softly under the station lights. "This feels like the perfect ending," the elderly woman remarked, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "We started here and now we've come full circle." One by one, they placed their hands on the plaque beneath the sculpture, silently acknowledging the journey they'd shared. No one said much. They didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself, a testament to the bonds forged through adversity and triumph. In the weeks that followed, news of the reunion spread, inspiring others to reflect on their own connections and contributions. Social media lit up with posts celebrating the enduring legacy of the subway incident. People shared stories of unlikely friendships, acts of courage, and moments of grace that had changed their lives. The hashtag #FullCircle became a rallying cry, encouraging individuals to embrace the power of community and compassion. For the elderly woman, the young thief, and everyone else involved, the reunion marked not an ending, but a continuation, a reminder that life is made richer by the relationships we nurture and the choices we make. Challenges remained, of course. Systemic issues couldn't be solved overnight, and personal growth was always a work in progress. But they faced these obstacles with renewed determination, knowing they weren't alone. As winter settled over the city, blanketing rooftops in snow and filling homes with the warmth of family gatherings, the spirit of the subway incident lived on. It wasn't confined to a single moment or place. It was woven into the fabric of daily life, carried forward by those who believed in the goodness of humanity. And so, the story continued, evolving with each passing day. From crowded subway platforms to bustling market streets, from quiet cafes to vibrant parks, its echoes could be heard in every act of kindness, every helping hand extended, and every choice to look out for one another. What began as a chance encounter on a train had grown into something extraordinary, a movement fueled by hope, resilience, and the unshakable belief that even in a world full of uncertainty, we have the power to create moments of light. The weeks following the reunion brought a renewed sense of purpose to everyone involved. The gathering had been more than just a chance to reconnect. It was a reminder of how far they'd come and how much work still lay ahead. For the elderly, woman, the young thief, Jason Statham, and the others, the bonds formed that day became a foundation for continued action. What started as individual stories had grown into a shared mission: to inspire kindness, accountability, and unity in their community. For the elderly woman, her role evolved into something even bigger. She began collaborating with local schools, helping teachers develop programs focused on empathy and civic responsibility. Her talks took on a new dimension, incorporating insights from the people she'd met during the reunion. She often spoke about the young thief's journey, emphasizing that redemption is possible when society chooses compassion over judgment. "He could have stayed lost," she would say, her voice steady with conviction. "But instead, he chose to rise. And we helped him do that." Students listened intently, their curiosity sparked by her stories. One class, inspired by her message, launched a project called Kindness Coins. They created small tokens stamped with phrases like "Pay It Forward" and distributed them throughout the city. When someone performed an act of kindness, they passed the coin along, creating a chain reaction of goodwill. Within weeks, the initiative gained traction, with recipients sharing photos and stories online. The movement reminded everyone that even the smallest gestures, a smile, a helping hand, or a kind word, could create ripples far beyond what anyone might expect. Meanwhile, the young thief found himself stepping into a leadership role he never imagined possible. Encouraged by the support he received at the reunion, he began speaking publicly about his experiences. At first, it was daunting. Standing in front of crowds made him nervous, and he worried about being judged. But each time he shared his story, he grew more confident. He spoke honestly about his past mistakes, the struggles of rebuilding his life, and the importance of second chances. His vulnerability resonated deeply with listeners, many of whom approached him afterward to thank him for his courage. One evening, after addressing a group of teenagers at a youth center, a young girl stayed behind to talk to him. "I've been thinking about dropping out of school," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But hearing you speak, it makes me think maybe I can turn things around too." Her words stayed with him long after she left, reinforcing the impact he was having, not just on individuals but on the next generation. Jason Statham, though busy with filming schedules, remained committed to amplifying the message of the subway incident. During breaks on set, he often reflected on the reunion and its significance. "It wasn't just about looking back," he told a reporter during an interview. "It was about looking forward, about reminding ourselves that every choice matters, no matter how small." Inspired by the Kindness Coins project, he partnered with a nonprofit organization to launch a similar initiative aimed at empowering underserved communities. Dubbed Ripple Effect, the program encouraged participants to document acts of kindness and share them online, creating a virtual map of positivity that spanned cities and countries. Social media played a crucial role in spreading these efforts. Videos of strangers performing thoughtful deeds went viral, accompanied by heartfelt messages of gratitude. A commuter who returned a lost wallet, a shopkeeper who gave away free meals to struggling families, a passerby who helped an elderly person cross the street. Each story added another thread to the tapestry of connection and care that had begun with a single act on a subway train. Back in London, the spirit of collaboration deepened. Community groups worked together to tackle issues like homelessness, food insecurity, and public safety. Volunteers organized drives to collect warm clothing for those in need, while local businesses donated supplies and resources. Even commuters got involved, forming networks to ensure vulnerable passengers felt safe during late-night rides. Transit authorities introduced new measures based on feedback from riders, including better lighting and increased security presence in stations. At the heart of it all was the subway station where the incident had occurred. Now considered a symbol of resilience and hope, it became a hub for community events. Artists painted murals celebrating unity and strength, while musicians performed free concerts for travelers rushing to and from their destinations. On weekends, volunteers handed out flyers promoting safety tips alongside messages of encouragement. "You are not alone. Together, we thrive." As spring returned, bringing longer days and warmer weather, the city seemed to breathe easier. Parks filled with laughter and chatter, as families gathered for picnics and games. Street performers entertained crowds with music and magic tricks, their acts punctuated by applause and cheers. In neighborhoods once divided by mistrust, residents came together to plant gardens, host block parties, and build playgrounds for children. The changes weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. It was in the little things, a neighbor offering to shovel snow, a stranger holding the elevator door, a child waving hello to someone sitting alone on a bench. For the elderly woman, the young thief, and everyone else touched by the subway incident, the journey was ongoing. Challenges remained. Systemic inequalities persisted, personal struggles flared up, and moments of doubt crept in. But they faced these obstacles with resilience, knowing they weren't alone. Their shared experiences had taught them that progress wasn't linear, It required patience, persistence, and faith in the power of collective effort. And yet, as life moved forward, the legacy of that night on the subway continued to grow. New friendships formed, old wounds healed, and unexpected opportunities arose. The seeds planted that evening had taken root, sprouting into something extraordinary, a movement fueled by hope, compassion, and the belief that even in a world full of uncertainty, we have the power to create moments of light. One sunny afternoon, as the elderly woman sat on a park bench watching children play, she reflected on how much had changed since that fateful night. Her bag, once stolen and returned, rested beside her, its contents safe and secure. But more importantly, her faith in humanity had been restored and multiplied. She smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We're stronger together," she whispered to herself, echoing the words she had spoken so many times before. "Stronger than we ever thought possible."